Hello, grown black folks talk. I don't know quite what I'm going to call this one yet. A lot happened today. And I wanted to share, I suppose I'll call this the agony and the ecstasy of black progress. I was at an event today. It was a press conference. And without getting into too many details, because it deals with very large events in California politics, um, not as large as the events in Georgia today, and I'll come back to that, but very large events in California in politics that are in process. And so it is important not to let too many cats out of the bag. But let's just say that I've talked to you about Pastor D. Manning Jackson of my church, El Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, of the previous two generations. He was contemporaneous with my grandmother. And his accomplishments in senior housing. And in this year, he and the work that pastors like him were doing has been increasingly recognized, and it has made it to the state level. In essence, Black men in particular, and all the people that work with them, are being acknowledged for the work that they have done in leading the van and the actual model for the kinds of things that California needs to do today in order to solve the housing crisis. And there are a lot of details I won't go into because these matters are still moving through the legislature here. I met the state's, well, I didn't meet him, but I was in the presence of the state senator today who has been advancing this, and I was able to see other members of the coalition as well. It was a beautiful moment to hear all the history of what Black people and Black men in the generation of my grandfather were able to do to house their own people and essentially everybody else. It was good to be reminded of a time that proves not that long ago, two generations ago, of what we are able to do together. The ecstasy, the agony. Uh, how do I say this nicely? The baton has been passed. In the room in decision-making positions, there was exactly one Black man, my pastor today, Kiva L. McNeil, Reverend Kiva L. McNeil, the El Bethel Missionary Baptist Church. He's 71 years old. He's a generation of my father. There were only 3 Black women, and only 2 of them were under 45. I'm one of those. And I'm 41, the other one is 40. That's it. That's all. If members of my church had not rolled out, the state senator brought 11 people who were involved in the coalition. It was beautiful to see that. And Black men were represented and the working men that are going to make all these things happen. And it's good to see that Black men are being hired fairly, at least represented in representative terms. So most of the Black men were my age, and as usual, because I'm too old and too fat for them, they looked past me. So I didn't get a chance to actually meet any of them. They ignored me. I'm the secretary of the board, which means that I have a great deal of say in anything that our church and our associated organizations are going to do to give those men jobs. But we know what the tenor of the times is. So it is what it is. You know, not interested. Now I could sit down and talk to any of these decision-making men that were not married as well. There's plenty of fish in the sea. But I would rather have not done that. I would prefer to have a man in my father's image and my grandfather's image. Because remember, I've shared with you before that Dr. D. Manning Jackson's widow was the first person to make me a secretary and teach me how to do it. So the fact that I can sit up and be in the company of senators and sit at the head table has to do with D. Manning Jackson, even though I never met him. The fact that we have a legacy that has Black boys and Black girls in it has to do with D. Manning Jackson. But I can't pass it on with Black men who are not there in those decision-making seats. I am a decision maker. I cannot marry down to a construction worker because in order to uphold the responsibility that I have to be, well, okay, let me correct that. On average, that will not work well because my brain is wired to make decisions on a much, 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 much larger level. Now, if you have the situation where a construction worker has enough respect for how different my mind works and how much room I need to get certain things done for the community that we both live in, that's a different thing. But again, I told you, the black construction worker, all they saw was that I'm not going to make them, I'm not going to be able to, they looked at me like, well, she's not going to be able to help us move up and be treated more like white men in society. Wrote me off from gate. That's fine. But this is also one of the reasons why there were no men in that age group who were in decision making authority in California. Not one under 71 years of age, which means that the generation of D. Manning Jackson has no heirs among black men in San Francisco. Kiva McNeil is from North Carolina. And so every other ethnic group in San Francisco has picked up the drop baton. And now we have to go with them and hope that they remember that black men started them down the path. But if you study history back to the dawn of time, that's not typically what happens. So I sat there in the middle of this celebration and realized, looking around at what was going on and who the representatives are from California, that the train that we started down the track is now the thing about Pastor McNeil. Nah, we not gonna be on the caboose. But he's 71 years old, and there's no one significantly younger than him that can pick up the ball. And what's going to end up happening is these same black men who want to act like I don't exist, if they were in positions of authority and they had to actually acknowledge that I exist and they can't do anything without me, we have some black men in our generation who would rather see it drop than to let me be recognized as a person of value, because that blows up their whole system of what women are valued in moving forward to finally being the man in America. They will let it drop. And because there's been a lot of letting things drop, that's why there were no decision makers in the room. Oh, by the way, did I mention San Francisco has a black mayor now? And there was still no decision makers in the room? The black mayor is a woman about my age. And if black men and black women were able to work together harmoniously, if black men had been able to follow in the footsteps of their forefathers, because again, black men spearheaded all this. The state of California admires it and sees it as a springboard to do amazing things in the same model. But somehow the fathers and the sons are disconnected. It's not black women's fault. The models exist. You have to be an exceptionally weak man to get up and talk about, I couldn't learn from my father in a generation where these things were together. With all these examples around, there's nobody. Now, side note to side note, I said to put a pin in the election. Congratulations to Senator Raphael Warnock, who has now won his election in Georgia, and Mr. Herschel Walker can go somewhere and enjoy his laurels as one of the NFL's fine, well, college football, actually, one of college football's finest players and one of the NFL's professionals, and go sit down and then sit on his laurels for a little while. So we have 60 and about 53. Raphael Warnock was born in 1959. So I do not say that there are not men into the 60s generation that are there, but there is a staggering lack. And if you look at American politics, you will also see this. Now, racism plays a part in this, of course, but we cannot say that we did not have models. We can't say we didn't have models. And that was what was so, that's why I say the agony and the ecstasy. Now, can black women carry these things forward alone if necessary with the help of other decision makers? I don't see we have a choice in many cases. But fortunately, El Bethel has a very competent pastor who's in magnificent health. And so if he can hang on like Joe Biden has hung on as president of the United States for another 9 years, we're going to be in a very good position. But nothing is guaranteed. At 41, there's no guarantee that I'll see 50. I'm doing what I can. I'm out here, all kind of room and clothes. I'm out here doing my work. I'm doing the best I can. Pastor McNeil is doing the best he can. But generationally, there are no black men to fill that gap. So what are black women going to end up having to do? We're going to have to make common cause in every possible way imaginable with men who are actually in the positions that we are in order to secure ourselves and to secure those things in the community that must be secured. I note, even at the church where I attend, I note that there are a lot of those young people are biracial now because people had to make stable situations with whom they can make stable situations. What this basically means is in 30 years, El Bethel, which will have control of all this over here, will be a biracial run church. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. I'm not old enough to know exactly where the baton was dropped. And this is why I say the agony and ecstasy of Black progress. It is wonderful to hear about the generation of my grandparents, the men who did all this with the women that they worked with. Some of the men who went to church with Pastor Jackson were able to make it. We do have some surviving women. Average age of a black man is 72. Kiva McNeil is there. It was wonderful to hear that. It was difficult to understand, to look around and understand. Other people were represented down to them bringing their babies to the event, little crying babies. There were two beautiful little young people there today. And they did what they do and cry and mess up your camera and get on television because you hear their little voices. And the senator acknowledged that fact. Other people had 5 generations of people in the building. But eventually, what it ends up coming down to is you have to do business with people you can do business with. Don't ask me to come do your carpentry job. I can't do that for you. I can't be married to anyone who just sees every woman he meets as a kind of a project to does she arouse me sexually? Will she impress my boys? And will she help me be seen as an honorary white man in society? I can be with decision makers because I am one. I am a decision maker on a level that the state of California admires, meaning that 41 and post ball, the things that I can actually do in this world are still, I'm middle-aged. A lot of people top out, realize there's nothing else we can do at age 40. It's all downhill from here. Nope. So I have to be with people I have to make intimate connections with, and unfortunately, and I think as Black women, as we continue to advance, I mean, I've seen this since I was in college, and I talked with my mom, who's contemporaneous with Kiva McNeil, and she's like, well, it was like that when I was going to college. It was like that when I was working at the same place that you're working at. Same thing. But she caught my dad from the previous generation. She was blessed to live in a time when that was more likely to happen. The agony and the ecstasy of Black progress in 2022 about to go to 2023. But here's the thing, I'm a realist. I have to spend my life with people who understand the how to carry the responsibility, how to think in a manner that allows you to look at millions and billions of dollars of resources, millions and billions of dollars of responsibility, millions and billions of dollars of fiduciary responsibility. In other words, we can't get up into the till. Everything has to be accounted for. Like I asked a hard accounting question in a meeting today. These questions have to be answered. You are dealing with, we are connected to things that will have us connected to the Department of Justice if we mess it up. That's the level that I live on. And in seeking a lifetime companion, I can't be around people who have no understanding of what this is. We work with the lives of hundreds of people. And working with the state of California, we made yet a lot of work on, we are now affecting as a model the lives of millions of people. It's wonderful to be in that seat. It's sad to not see Black men keeping pace. And we can always go into why it is, but the why does not do anything about the fact that it isn't. And that Black men do not seem to often sit down with themselves and stop looking at every other reason why it can't happen. Because if D. Manning Jackson, born at a time when he couldn't walk down the street where he was born in San Antonio, Texas, and look at a white man in the face, could get $150 million worth of business done that the entire state of California, the seventh largest economy in the world, admires when things were real, when there was no internet, then I'm not understanding why the generation of his grandchildren and his great grandchildren, and then look at it this way, he has some daughters too that ain't about nothing either, because most of them weren't there. They were not in decision making positions either. There are some Black women, but we're only talking about two. There's 50, 11 people up in there. Two. And no Black men under 70. Now, we could have brought it down to 65. Our treasurer of the board had to go to work. He's out here trying to pull our men out of the juvenile justice, our young men out of the juvenile justice system before they go out there. This man works every day on reentry. But those are not generally the populations that are going to produce, and that's a third. So I don't see Black men, because you go look up the number of convicted felons for yourself. You will find out I'm not lying to you. I don't see the urgency among Black men of talking about, okay, how do we get to these seats? Okay, if we have generations of men that did, Raphael Warnock has made it back there. Barack Obama just passed by not that many years ago, less than a decade ago. There's ways that we can do this. How about we get together and learn? Black women are doing some better. I mean, I look at the, like I've listed this last time, the content creators that I look at, Mocha Mommy, Samri Bliss, Black women making money, Black women building wealth. I'd see some effort on, okay, let's not spend all this time talking about the trouble that we have with the men and actually build ourselves. I would love it if someone would contradict me in the comments and post a bunch of Black male channels where Black men are not spending hundreds, almost all their time talking about why they can't, not spending all their time talking about why it's Black women's fault and why we aren't worth building for. I was interacting with a gentleman later today after all this, and he kept talking about how, why do all this when we can go get a woman from another country? And I just said very simply to him, I said, just understand it. We understand it. You go to another country, 40K a year, uh, Black women making money. Should Black women marry men making 40K a year, $40,000 a year? We just understand that, yeah, you're going to be looked up to there because in the Philippines or in the Dominican Republic, your 40K is a fortune there because you can actually be the breadwinner and the provider in that culture. But just understand that's a concession. You aren't interested in the light of all the advancements that we have in doing it here. It doesn't have anything to do with me being 41. It has to do with the fact that you don't think you can do it, and whatever you believe, you're right. Black men don't think they can get to the table anymore in San Francisco. And you know what? Keith Neal doesn't believe that. He was at the head of the table today. Any other men on that board could have been at the head of the table with any other women. We believe we could get there, and we were there. Our pictures were up on the wall when folks walked in. When folks of other nationalities, like, who's in charge here? We're in charge here. But if you don't believe you can, then you're right. Now, sometimes you believe you can, and still you really can't. My condolences again to Mr. Herschel Walker, who lost his election today. Sometimes, sometimes you really can't, even when you believe you can. It doesn't always work out that way. It doesn't work out for everybody. But this lack of effort is meaning that we are looking at the inheritance that our forefathers and our foremothers left us, and other people are picking it up and running. And now we have to hope that we have a place with them, and we started it. The agony and the ecstasy. But the thing is, Black people who are for progress, you have to go with whoever's for progress. And unfortunately, at this particular moment, it may be different elsewhere. I'm in California. If I'm going to go with people that are making progress in every area of my life, there will be some Black people, but we will not be anything like a plurality, to say nothing of a majority. I'm not saying we're not present. I'm saying in the decision making seats. So if you're going to be a decision maker, you got to roll with decision makers. And as a decision making woman, I have to be led by a decision making man. If I ever choose not to be single, you can't come to me because you're a man, but you do not have even close to the intellectual ability and practice that I have as someone of high responsibility. That's not going to work. You cannot lead from behind. But looking at what we looked at today, that means that, at least in the sphere of nonprofit work that I'm in, there may be people that weren't invited. It's possible. Possible. But it was both personally exhilarating and personally heartbreaking. And this is where we are right now in a lot of fears. What do we need to do with this? I have to keep moving. I have another event tomorrow. I might take some photographs and let y'all see me dolled up to the nines tomorrow. And I might also come home and be like, I don't care. Because the combination of the agony and the ecstasy is exhausting. It's exhausting. When you are a Black woman about something and you are always alone, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I wasn't entirely alone, but it's exhausting to see this contrast between what is possible and how much people are willing to invest in getting to the places where things are possible. But also, it is a privilege. And I thank God that He had mercy upon me and my family so that we could be fitted to represent and to carry the legacy of D. Manning Jackson on. We don't have everybody that I think that we should, but apparently God's like, I'm gonna pick who I want, and it's you and the few that are with you, and I'll get it done through y'all. God has never had to have the majority. He does not have to have the majority of Black people either. So that if we don't want to do those things that lead to us moving forward, we can be left back and be lost like everybody else. And if you look around, that's not big future talk. That's going on right now. You kind of need to decide in 2023 what side you want to be on. So I'll leave it with that thought. Y'all have a good day now. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.